A cowboy rode out looking for milk and found a woman who became more than he ever expected. Before we begin, hit that like button and tell us where you're watching from. Abel Harkin rode with his shoulders hunched against the bitter wind. The infant pressed tight against his chest. The air cut through his coat like a knife, biting through flesh and bone. He held the baby as if the pressure alone might keep the little thing alive. Late autumn had drained the land around Copper Ridge of all color. The grass stood dry and brittle, whispering against the frozen earth. The sky hung low and gray, thick with the promise of an early winter. Each breath Abel drew scraped cold through his throat. He'd been riding 3 days with only scraps of sleep, dark circles shadowing his eyes, his posture stiff from exhaustion. Still, he pushed on. To stop meant death for the child in his arms. Abel's past had already taken too much. He carried that loss in every slow movement, in the careful way he spoke, as if every word had a cost. Years ago, he'd lost his younger brother Caleb during a botched raid. Since then, he'd drifted across the frontier with no purpose but to stay alive and avoid trouble. He rarely entered towns, and when he did, it was only for supplies and silence. Then, 3 nights ago, he came across a wrecked wagon. Canvas ripped, wheels splintered, 2 bodies sprawled and still. From beneath the broken frame came a faint, desperate cry. Abel crouched, lifted the cloth, and found a baby, barely 4 months old, half wrapped in a torn blanket, lips cracked, eyes unfocused, skin cold as stone. He hadn't hesitated. He gave the child melted snow and the weakest broth he could make, then kept riding. Now, with winter closing in, he followed the thin trail of smoke curling from a ridge. An old trading post stood there, one he remembered passing years back. Maybe someone still lived inside. His goal was simple: keep the baby alive. Nothing else mattered. Abel dismounted, boots thudding against frozen dirt. The building leaned, its roof patched with old hides that flapped in the wind. The baby whimpered, a sound so thin it nearly broke him. "Hold on," Abel murmured, voice low and tight. He pushed open the crooked door. The hinges groaned. Cold air followed him in, blending with the stale scent of ash and dust. At first, it looked abandoned. Then a flicker of movement, soft, cautious, caught his eye near the back wall, where a beam of light slipped through a gap in the roof. A woman rose slowly from a blanket on the floor. Her name was Nita. Her long black hair hung loose, part braided, tangled from wind. She wore a torn deerskin dress, once fine, now frayed and scarred by travel. Her skin bore the marks of weeks spent surviving with little rest. Yet there was strength in her posture, a quiet resilience carved by grief. For nearly 2 months, Nita had been hiding here, nursing wounds no one could see. Her husband Sani and their newborn Tiva had been killed in a clash between settlers and her Apache people. After burying them, she wandered north, avoiding everyone, white men and Apache alike. She stopped here only because the walls kept out the wind. When Abel stepped in, her eyes went straight to the bundle in his arms. One look told her everything. The baby was starving, slipping away. She didn't flinch, didn't panic, just watched him with the alert stillness of someone who had known too much loss. "He won't last another night," Abel said. His voice was rough, unsteady. He wasn't a man used to asking for help, and the words scraped against his pride. Nita moved closer. Slowly. Her face didn't change, but her breath caught in a way that revealed something beneath the calm. Recognition. Pain. She extended her hand, palm up. Abel hesitated. He wasn't afraid of her, But handing the baby over stirred a fear he hadn't felt in years, the fear of losing the only living soul that needed him. Still, he forced his fingers to let go. She could help. He couldn't. Nita took the child, her hands sure and practiced. Her thumb brushed his cheek, feeling how cold and limp he was. "He's starving," she said quietly, voice steady but filled with memory. "I tried everything," Abel said, defensive and tired. "He just can't swallow enough." She adjusted the child, resting him against the warmth of her skin beneath her torn neckline. Abel looked away, then forced himself to meet her gaze again. It wasn't shame, not exactly, just confusion, and something he didn't dare name. "He needs milk," Nita said. "Real milk." Abel's heart sank. He'd carried the child across half the wilderness, and now realized he didn't know enough to save him. "I don't have anything like that," he admitted. Nita drew a slow breath. "My body still remembers," she whispered. "Not much, but enough. I can try." Relief hit Abel so hard he nearly lost his balance. He watched her lower herself by the cold hearth, guiding the child to her breast. At first, the baby only fumbled weakly. Then, slowly, the sound came. A fragile suckling, followed by a soft gasp. Abel exhaled, the tension bleeding from his chest. For the first time in days, he dared to believe the boy might live. Nita's eyes stayed on the child, her touch steady. Abel studied her hands, the gentle confidence of someone who had once known love and loss in equal measure. She was letting herself feel again, and he knew how dangerous that could be. After a long while, she spoke. "You should eat. You look about ready to fall over." "I'm fine," Abel said. "You're not," she replied, calm and unyielding. He didn't argue. When the baby finally slept against her, breathing stronger, Nita lifted her gaze. Abel looked hollow, worn thin by worry, but he also looked anchored, as if leaving wasn't an option. "You can stay here tonight," she said simply. It wasn't an offer, it was a decision, and for the first time in a long, cold season, Abel Harkin didn't argue. It was a practical choice. Abel Harkin scanned the cabin, the sagging boards, the gaps in the roof, the draft slipping through the doorframe. Then his eyes drifted to Nita and the small life cradled in her arms. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We'll stay." He stepped all the way inside and pulled the door shut behind him. The wind pushed hard against the wood, but somehow the room already felt warmer. Not because of fire, but because someone here finally knew how to save a life. Abel leaned against the wall, watching the infant's chest rise and fall in steady rhythm. For the first time in days, something like hope, small, fragile, settled in his chest. The trading post was half collapsed, the night cold and unforgiving, and he had no plan beyond dawn. But Nita was here. The baby was breathing. For now, the three of them shared the same fragile peace inside those crooked walls. It wasn't safety, not yet, but it was a start. The wind eased off the door. The cabin fell into a heavy stillness. Abel slid down the wall to the floor, close enough to keep watch, far enough to give her space. Dim light filtered through the broken roof, tracing soft lines across Nita's face as she shifted the baby to her other arm, making sure he stayed latched. Each tiny breath, each flutter of movement, loosened the knot of fear inside Abel's chest. He hadn't realized how long he'd been holding that tension until now. Minutes passed before Nita spoke again. "Tell me what happened," she said, her voice low but steady. "People will want to know where the wagon was, who attacked it. There may be others still out there." Abel nodded. She was right. He'd been asking himself those same questions all along. He rubbed a hand across his tired eyes before answering. "I found the wagon near the pass," he said. "Looked like it had been hit maybe 2-3 days before. A man and woman, gone. Supplies scattered, shot holes in the boards. Whoever did it didn't stick around long." He paused, remembering the scene. The silence, the blood, the cold stillness. "4 horses," he went on. "Heavy boots. Could have been bandits. Could have been drifters. Out here there's too many men willing to kill for a rifle or a saddle." Nita's jaw tightened. "You saw no footprints heading north or west?" He shook his head. "No, just the baby under the wagon. Maybe they hid him there. Maybe they thought he was already gone." The child's small hand curled weakly against the neckline of her torn dress. Nita brushed her thumb along his cheek, her voice softening. "He was meant to be found." Abel didn't answer. But her words landed deep, heavy with something he couldn't name. He'd asked himself that question a dozen times across those cold miles. Why he couldn't leave the child. Why he kept riding even when it made no sense. Maybe it wasn't about reason. Maybe it was about the part of him that still knew how to care. When the baby finally drifted into milk-heavy sleep, Nita lifted him gently and wrapped him in the blanket Abel had carried. "He needs warmth," she murmured. "And rest. So do you." Abel pushed himself up from the floor, his knees stiff, his body sore. "Roof's got holes all over," he muttered. "Wind'll slice through here all night." "That's why I sleep by the hearth," she said, nodding toward the stone pit, cold and gray. "The stones hold heat longer than air." Abel glanced at the ashes. "Then I'll get a fire going." Before she could object, he stepped out into the wind. The cold hit like a slap, but it cleared his head. He gathered what dry wood he could find beneath the collapsed lean-to, scanning the tree line twice out of habit. No movement. Only old tracks, hers and now his. When he came back inside, Nita was adjusting the baby's blanket. Abel knelt by the hearth and struck flint until a spark caught, growing into a thin flame that licked at the dry kindling. Slowly, warmth crept through the cabin. Not much, but enough. "You've been out here alone this long?" he asked, eyes still on the fire. "Yes," she said simply, no pity in her tone. "There were places I avoided, places I watched from a distance. I stopped here because no one came." She studied him as she spoke, weighing whether she could trust him beyond simple necessity. "I only needed quiet," she said. Abel nodded. Quiet was something he understood. He added another log to the flame and let the crackle fill the silence. "If you want," he said after a while, "we can move the bed closer to the fire. Keep him warm." "I have no bed," she replied. "Only blankets." Her gaze softened slightly. "But tonight, we make room." It wasn't boldness. It wasn't flirtation. Just acceptance. The quiet understanding that they shared a fragile duty now. Abel reached for the folded blankets near her spot. "I'll help." Nita didn't protest. Together they spread the blankets near the hearth, making space just big enough for the child to sleep between them. When Abel laid the small bundle down, the baby stirred, whimpered once, then settled into the warmth. "You saved him?" Nita said softly. "No," Abel answered, just as quiet. "You did." Their eyes met in the firelight, a moment of wordless connection that said more than either dared to admit. Something shifted in Abel's chest. Respect, gratitude, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. He leaned back, rubbing a hand over the stubble on his jaw. "Once he's stronger, I'll find a town," he said. "Someone with a doctor. Someone who might know who he belonged to." Nita's fingers paused on the blanket. And until then? Abel hesitated, though he already knew the answer. Until then, he said quietly, I'm not going anywhere. This time she didn't look away. Her breathing eased, almost relieved. Good, she said. He'll need both of us. The fire crackled, soft and steady. Outside, the wind calmed. The baby slept between them, his breathing strong and even. For the first time since the ambush, Abel Harkin felt the night settle around him without fear. The world outside still held danger. Raiders, hunger, the unknown. But inside that broken trading post, the three of them were alive, together, and finding something close to peace. Morning came slow, gray light filtering through the cracks in the roof. Abel woke first, his back sore from the wall, legs heavy from the trail. He forced himself upright, scanning the room by habit. Nita still slept near the hearth, one arm curled protectively around the baby. Her hair spilled across the blanket, the infant's small chest rising and falling in calm rhythm. For the first time, Abel allowed himself to smile. Small, tired, but real. For a long beat, Abel Harkin didn't move. Just stood there and watched, the way Nita cradled the boy, how the fire's dying glow brushed her cheekbones, how the child's skin no longer carried the pale hush of death. A quiet kind of relief crept into Abel's chest, thick and grounding. But right behind it came the questions. Ones any good man or sharp listener would ask. Who was going to come looking for that baby? What if the devils who'd done this weren't done yet? How long could the three of them last in a busted-down shelter with no food and too much cold? Abel eased up to his feet, slow and silent. He slipped out into the morning like a shadow, breath catching in his throat as the frost stung his lungs. The land stretched out in every direction, bone-white and empty. He crouched, scanned the ground. No fresh tracks, just his and hers, old ones. He ducked under the broken lean-to, grabbed his knife and rope, and started toward the tree line. If he didn't bring in meat by sundown, they'd be hungry come night. Still, a knot twisted in his gut at the thought of leaving her alone in that cabin. If something came down from those hills. He turned back, just for a moment, enough to snag the rest of his gear, and there she was. Nita was awake now, upright, with the baby tucked snug to her chest. Her long black hair fell over one shoulder, her fingers checking the infant's tiny hands with care that didn't shake. She looked stronger. Not rested? God, no, but steadier than last night. You're up early, she said, voice soft. Need food, Abel answered. Creek's got signs of game. I won't be long. She eyed him for a second. You think someone followed you? Could've, he said. Tracks at the wagon were old, but raiders move strange. If they realized that boy was still breathing. She finished the thought herself. Her grip on the blanket tightened just a little. I want to check the ridge too, Abel said, eyes narrowing. Make sure no one's out there watching. Nita adjusted the baby, tugging her torn dress higher over one shoulder. The neckline sagged, but modesty wasn't something she clung to anymore. Survival had beaten it out of her. Still, when Abel's eyes drifted lower for just a breath, she caught him. Held his gaze. Not angry, not shy, just aware. He looked away first. Cleared his throat. I'll keep the fire lit, she said, tone even, and I'll stay inside. If I hear anything strange, I'll go to the back. Door sticks, he added, but it'll hold. She gave a small nod. With that, Abel stepped out, vanished into the trees. Nita watched him through the cracked frame, her jaw set, her heart in unfamiliar territory. Dependence. She wasn't used to having someone to lean on. She'd long accepted no one was coming for her. But this man, quiet and worn, had carried a child across frozen land and now guarded her door like it mattered. She shifted the baby. His eyes opened for a second, soft, unfocused. "You're safer than yesterday," she whispered. "He did that, not me." She stirred the fire, fed it what Abel had gathered. Then she checked the cabin, the kind of thing any listener'd wonder. What was left in this place? Not much. One rusty pot, a dented cup, a few broken shelves, a tiny jar of herbs she'd saved for pain. By midday, footsteps crunched outside, heavy but careful. Abel's stride. She opened the door before he knocked. There he stood, rabbit over his shoulder, face unreadable. "Didn't see anything out there," he said. "Old tracks, no movement. Looks like this place is off trail." "Good," she breathed. He set the rabbit down, knelt by the fire. "He wake?" "A little," she said. "Stronger today." "That's real good," he murmured. She watched him skin the rabbit, hands practiced and sure. "You were a rancher?" she asked, filling in the blanks for those listening. "Or a trail hand?" "Both," he said low. "Ran cattle near Bitter Mesa. After my brother Caleb passed, I left. Didn't see the point in staying." "And now?" Abel's eyes flicked to the baby. "Now I got one." Nita stared at him, something soft settling in her features. "He chose you," she said, "before he knew you." Abel swallowed hard. That truth sat heavy. They cooked, ate, fed the baby again. As dusk crept in, Abel climbed up and patched more of the roof. The hides held this time. Nita warmed the blankets, hummed a tune without meaning to. When the fire dimmed, Abel lay near the hearth. Nita lay across from him. Baby in the middle, bundled tight, breathing even. For the first time since the attack on that wagon, Abel felt no questions clawing at his thoughts. Just the quiet knowledge that the three of them, against every odd, were becoming something. Something like a family. When dawn broke, soft orange light spilled through the patched-up roof. The fire was nearly out, but the cabin felt warmer. Nita was already awake, cross-legged by the baby. She looked up at Abel, nodded, just a small, tired nod between survivors. He stretched, joints cracking. Sleep hadn't come easy. Not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. Food, shelter, winter, and something else he hadn't said aloud yet. He didn't want to leave. "He ate well," Nita said. "Color's back." Abel knelt beside them. The baby's lips had darkened back to pink, his breathing strong, hands twitching with life. "He looks—" Abel paused, unsure. "Better." She raised a brow. "You care for him like he's yours." He looked away, jaw clenched. "Doesn't matter whose he is. He deserves a chance." But deep down, the question gnawed. Could he keep this boy? Would he try? What if someone came looking? Abel shoved those thoughts aside. Survival came first. He reached for his coat. "I'm gonna check the creek. Might be fish if it ain't iced over." Nita shifted, bracing a hand on the floor. "You shouldn't go alone." Abel paused, mid-step, caught off guard. "You seen something?" Nita shifted her weight, not out of fear, but like she was weighing every word. "Saw movement by the ridge, before you came back yesterday." Her voice was calm, but the undertone said otherwise. "Might have been a deer, might not." It was the kind of detail that'd gnaw at any man's peace. How safe were they, really? And was the danger still out there? Abel's jaw flexed. "You see tracks?" "Too far for that. Just a tall shadow. Didn't move like an animal. Abel's breath came slow, steady. "All right," he said, voice low. "I'll head up again. You stay close, keep the fire going." She nodded, stepped back inside. He glanced over his shoulder one last time. At her, at the baby, then headed into the cold. The frost snapped under his boots. The air bit harder than the day before. He followed the ridgeline, eyes scanning every brush, every patch of dirt. Quiet wasn't always a mercy out here. Sometimes quiet meant eyes watching. He stopped near a low patch of mesquite and bent down. There, half buried under brush, boot prints. Big ones, heavier than his, angled downhill. Not fresh, but not forgotten, neither. One man, maybe two, maybe just passing, or maybe not. When he got back, Nita was feeding Jace by the hearth. Her eyes met his as soon as the door creaked. "You saw something?" "Footprint," Abel said, keeping it even. "Too close for comfort. Could have been just wanderers. Could have been worse." She clutched the baby tighter. "Bandits, maybe. Or someone sniffing around for the wagon folk." "Yeah," Abel said. "And if they know that child's still breathing, they'll be back." The question hung thick in the air. Would someone come claim him? And if so, friend or threat? To ease the weight, Abel knelt by the fire, scooped out the rabbit bones. "I'll make a broth. Might do you good." "I'm fine." "You're worn," he said, matter of fact. "You've been feeding him all night. You need strength." This time she didn't fight him, just watched. The cabin filled with the scent of meat and smoke. Jace let out a healthy cry, sharp, strong. Nita swayed gently, whispering soft Apache words Abel couldn't catch. Her dress slipped slightly again, skin showing as she moved. He looked away, respectful, but the pull was real. That quiet draw. That beauty rooted in grit. She laid the baby back down, then asked the question Abel had been dodging. "What if someone comes, saying he's theirs?" Abel stilled. The truth was already set in his chest. "If they're good folks, I'd give him back. That's right. And if they're not?" she asked, voice steady. "Then they ain't taking him," Abel said. His voice left no room for doubt. She held his eyes and nodded. No argument, no need for one. The fire crackled soft. Outside, the wind picked up again. Inside, they sat closer than yesterday. Not kin, not yet, but something was taking root. Slow, quiet, steady. Snow teased the edge of the sky come afternoon. Abel stepped out to split more wood, his mind still stuck in that cabin. Who were the men near the ridge? Were they tied to Dutch's gang? And if they came back, how in hell was he going to protect both Nita and the baby with half a roof and one rifle? Each crack of the axe echoed sharp. Controlled. Not anger. Awareness. When he hauled the firewood inside, he found her cleaning the place up. Jace was asleep, snug in a blanket. Nita had tidied the hearth, wiped the floors with a rag soaked in melted snow. For a moment, the cabin didn't feel like a ruin. It felt like a home. "You ought to be off your feet," Abel said, setting the wood down. "I'm not weak," she replied. "Just cautious." He nodded. Then noticed the tear in her dress had widened, skin showing along her hip and waist. She didn't flinch, but he turned, let the heat in his chest settle. "You done all this since morning?" "Needed something to do. Can't sit still too long. Brings back too much." Abel understood. Staying busy was how he got through his own kind of ghosts. "I can set up tasks," he offered. "Plenty needs fixin'." Her lips tugged into the barest smile. "Give me light work, nothing heavy." "Deal." Jace cooed, waking. Nita bent to lift him, arms practiced now. Abel's eyes trailed up, then quickly away, as she cradled the baby. The neckline of her dress slipped again. He focused on the fire instead. "You're burning more energy than I am," he said. "You need real food." "Food helps," she said, "but strength comes from other things. Like?" "Safety." That word sat heavy between them. Abel nodded slow. "I'll keep watch tonight. If someone's close, I'll know." "You can't stay up all night," she said gently. "You'll fall on your face." "Then we take shifts." Nita blinked, surprised. "You trust me with the watch?" "I trust you to keep him alive," Abel said. "That's all I need." She didn't smile, not quite. But her gaze shifted, firmer now. Respect. They let the silence settle after that, warm with the crackle of fire and the soft, suckling sounds of a child growing stronger. After a while, Abel Harkin rose from his seat and stepped toward the door. He checked the latch, his eyes narrowing as he peered into the deepening woods. The sky had turned a dull charcoal, and snowflakes, small, silent, drifted down from above. "We'll need better cover from the cold," he muttered. "The roof won't hold if a storm rolls in," he added. "There's old hide in the back room," Nita offered, her voice soft. "Too stiff for clothes, but might be good for patching." "Good," Abel said, already turning. "We'll use it." She sat watching as he dragged the weather-worn hide out and nailed it over the biggest breach in the roof. His hands didn't waver. Every strike of the hammer, every measured breath, showed the life of a man who'd weathered storms with no one else to lean on. But now, he wasn't patching up just for himself. "You're fixing this place like you mean to stay," Nita said, almost to herself. Abel paused mid-swing. "I'll stay till you and the boy got somewhere safe." "And after that?" she asked gently. He swallowed. Truth was, he didn't know. A question had been edging into his thoughts, one a stranger might ask too. Did he want them to leave at all? Or was he already picturing something he couldn't name? "We'll see," he said finally, lowering the hammer. She held his gaze for a heartbeat longer than comfort allowed, reading things he hadn't meant to show. But she didn't press. As darkness settled, they ate a quiet supper and kept the fire strong. The baby, Jace, slept between them in the warmest spot. Abel sat with his back to the door, rifle upright against his knee. His eyes stayed sharp. Nita stared at the boy's tiny chest, rising and falling, then looked over. "If someone comes," she said, voice low but sure, "we fight together." Abel's jaw set, not from fear, but from the bone-deep resolve that settled in without question. "We do," he replied. "No one touches him. No one touches you." The fire crackled. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, something unspoken grew, solid, quiet, already too strong to break. The land turned white under night's hush. Wind scoured the edges of the cabin, and every shadow beyond the window took on weight. Abel kept the first watch, back to the door, rifle across his lap, listening to every gust. He hadn't counted on a storm this early. A listener might wonder the same. Could the patched-up cabin hold through real winter? Could the three of them last long enough for the baby to heal? By the time Nita laid a gentle hand on his shoulder for her turn, Abel's eyes were raw from staying open. He didn't argue. He stood, rubbed his face, and laid down near the fire. Sleep hit fast, too deep. When he woke, the silence felt wrong. Nita sat at the hearth, Jace resting in her lap. Her posture was tense, gaze locked on the door. "What is it?" Abel asked, voice barely a whisper. "Someone's near," she replied, still staring ahead. "While I slept?" She nodded. Couldn't hear footsteps, snow muffles. But I felt it. Air shifted through the cracks. She tilted her chin toward the side window. Abel followed her line of sight. There, a shadow beyond the glass. He grabbed his coat and rifle. "You should have woken me." "I needed to be sure," she said. "If it was wind or a deer, no need to panic." He studied her face, torn between anger and admiration. "Next time," he said firmly, "wake me." Her gaze softened just a touch. "I will." She'd told him about movement on the ridge days before. But now they had proof. Someone was nearby, watching, maybe a scout, maybe someone hunting the baby, maybe worse. The risk wasn't just violence. It was losing Jace or losing Nita to a stranger's cruelty. Abel crouched at the window, wiped the frost with the back of his hand. Snow covered everything in smooth layers, hiding prints. But there, a faint disturbance near the tree line. Tall. Not an animal. He exhaled. Someone's there. Nita hugged the baby closer to her chest. They know we're here now. Abel stood slowly, every muscle tensing. We need a plan. This place won't hold if there's more than one. We could leave, Nita offered, steady despite the fear. There are hollows in the hills, caves no wind reaches. He shook his head. Not with a baby this week, not in a storm. She didn't argue, but the worry in her eyes echoed the dread building in his gut. He scanned the room, checking what he missed. Weak spots, tools, maybe weapons. Nita, he said quietly, did anyone know you were heading here? Her eyes drifted to Jace. One man, she said, back near the river. He saw me camp, asked questions. I lied, left fast. Could he have followed? I prayed he didn't, but his eyes. She trailed off, voice tightening. Abel's grip closed around the rifle. That answered what many would have wondered. Maybe she had been tracked. If he's the one out there, he won't like what he finds, Abel said coldly. Nita studied him. You'd fight for a child, not yours. And for a woman you barely know. I'd fight for anyone who don't deserve hurtin', he said, then added slower. But for you two, that's not even a question. The fire snapped. Abel turned back to the door. We reinforced this place today. Every crack, every seam. What do you need? She asked. Rope, cloth, hides, anything to block wind or slow a man down? She set the baby in the cradle Abel had shaped by hand, then slipped into the back room. When she returned, she moved closer to him, more in rhythm with his pace, as if danger had drawn them into step. They worked together for hours. Abel nailed loose boards. Nita stitched hide with sure fingers, sealing cold out. They stacked logs by the door and hung thick cloth over the windows. In between, Abel caught fleeting glimpses of her. The slope of her shoulder, the flicker of firelight on her skin, the soft sound when she pricked her finger on splintered wood. He kept his focus, mostly. By the time they sat down to eat, the sky outside had gone near black. Snow banked high against the doorframe. Nita fed Jace, settling beside him. Abel watched the two of them, something stirring in his chest that wasn't just protection. He's stronger because of you, she said. Abel shook his head. Because of us. Their eyes held for a beat, warmth between them even as the storm howled outside. The wind slammed hard against the walls, making the nailed hides shudder. They both turned toward the sound, alert, breath quiet. Night had only just begun. And whoever was out there was coming closer. The cabin held, tight and steady. The air inside had warmed, the cracks sealed, the wind outside shut out. but tension curled through the room like smoke from a dying fire. Abel Harkin sat with his rifle propped against his leg, shoulders taut, every creak in the timbers or gust of snow against the window twitching some old, hard-wired instinct born of dust trails and ambushes. Nita stayed near the hearth, rocking little Jace slow and steady. Her eyes flicked to the door every time the wind shifted. She hadn't said much, but Abel saw it in the way she breathed. Measured, ready. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for the boy. After a while, she spoke, voice quiet but steady. "You think the man I saw, same one who hit that wagon?" Abel had been gnawing that question all day. Likely anyone listening in would wonder too. "Could be," he muttered. "Or someone who found what was left. Raiders talk. Trade rumors like bullets. If he's following the trail..." She didn't finish it. Didn't have to. "Then we deal with him," Abel said. She dropped her gaze to Jace's face, eyes dark with worry. "Why would a man hunt a child who can't defend himself?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was grim. "Some men see weakness as opportunity." Not what she wanted to hear, but it was the bare-boned truth of the frontier. The baby stirred and let out a soft noise. Abel's head snapped around without thinking. Nita noticed that. His eyes, the way his jaw eased just slightly. Not fear, not surprise. Something gentler. She adjusted Jace in her arms and began to nurse him again, the neckline of her buckskin shift falling as she moved. Abel stared at the fire, jaw clenched, but that image of her, strong and tender both, worked under his skin in a way he didn't have words for. He cleared his throat and stood. "I'll check the window." He moved to the side wall, brushing the frost with his sleeve. Snow was stacked thick outside, but through the slits he caught it, a shape, low and moving, weaving between the trees. He backed away, muscles coiled. "Someone's out there." Nita straightened instantly. "Same figure as before?" "Can't be sure," he said, voice low. "But he's watching the cabin." The next question rose quick and sharp, like a knife out of the dark. Why hadn't whoever it was made a move? "Maybe he's alone," Abel murmured, "waiting on the storm to break, or wants to see who else is here." "Or he's waiting for you to sleep," Nita said. "Some cowards only strike then." Abel's jaw flexed. "Then he'll be disappointed." He hauled the crates she'd found earlier toward the door, stacking them as a barricade. Nita stepped forward to help, but he gently stopped her. "Stay with him," he said, nodding toward Jace. She paused, then nodded and stepped back. Abel worked for a long while, reinforcing the frame, lining up sight lines from the window, checking his rifle like an old friend. Nita's eyes followed him. She finally spoke again. "You handle that gun like a man who's seen more fighting than you admit." Abel froze a beat. "I've survived things I don't speak of," he said quietly. She waited. He exhaled. "Used to ride with a small crew. Men who didn't wait on law. We tracked down raiders, killers. My brother rode with me," he added after a beat. "He shouldn't have." Nita's voice softened. "And you walked away from that life." "Had no reason to keep on," he replied. His voice dropped a notch. "Until now." He didn't look her way, but the weight behind his words filled the space between them like smoke. Nita ran her fingers over the baby's cheek. "He gave you a reason." Abel's eyes met hers. "So did you." Silence settled, not cold, not distant. A silence thick with understanding. The baby finished nursing and drifted to sleep, breaths deep and slow. Nita laid him in the cradle Abel had whittled. When she stood, Abel saw the faint tremble in her hands. She'd been hiding her hunger and fatigue all day. "You haven't eaten near enough," he said. "I'm fine." "No," he replied, firm. "You're not." She hesitated. "Sit." She obeyed. He handed her the last bit of rabbit stew. She ate slow at first, then faster, like her body remembered too late how empty it was. Color came back to her face. Then, crack! A branch snapped outside. Not wind, not animal. Abel froze. Nita gasped and clutched the baby close. He crouched and moved to the window. The storm had eased just enough to reveal a silhouette stepping out from the trees. Thick coat, rifle on his back, cautious stride. "Someone's comin'," Abel whispered. "One man," Nita breathed, holding Jace tighter. "The man from the river?" "Looks like it." The figure stopped about 30 feet from the door, then called out, not shouting but loud enough. "You in the cabin. I need to talk." Abel raised his rifle, calm and steady. Nita's voice trembled for the first time. "He found us." The wind howled behind the stranger, framing him like a ghost in motion. Abel moved in front of her, body a wall between danger and what mattered most. "Stay back," he whispered. "No matter what happens." Wind hissed through the seams. The baby breathed soft. Outside, the man waited. Too close to ignore. Too quiet to trust. Abel stood firm, breath steady, rifle aimed. The man didn't move. His coat flapped, snow caking on his shoulders. Nita's heart pounded so hard it echoed in her throat. Everyone would be asking the same thing. Who was he? What did he want? Was this the shadow that had chased her from the river? "I ain't here to cause trouble," the man called again. "Just want a word." Abel didn't flinch. "Then speak from where you stand." Pause. Then the stranger relaxed a hair. "Name's Jed Flint. I passed a busted wagon back east. Saw tracks leading this way. Came to see if anyone survived." Nita stiffened behind Abel. He felt it. "What else you see?" Abel asked, louder now. "A lot of blood," Jed replied. "Bandits hit fast and hard." His voice dropped. "But I didn't see the child." Abel's grip on the rifle locked tight. Jace whimpered softly. Nita held him closer, her hands shaking. They both knew they couldn't stay silent much longer. Silence would have made him look guilty, or worse, weak. And if the man out there truly meant to help, shutting him out might cost him what they needed most. Word on the raiders. Abel Harkin raised his voice, clear but cautious. "You armed?" "One rifle," the man called back. "Slung behind me. Ain't reaching for it." "Then why follow the trail?" Abel asked. "Why come knocking in the middle of a damn snowstorm?" A pause. Then the answer came. "Because I figured maybe someone was still alive," the man said. "And 'cause raiders, the real mean ones, they double back sometimes. Didn't want whoever's inside getting finished off like the last bunch." Behind him, Nita's whisper was like the wind. He could be lying. Abel gave a slight nod, but he didn't lower the rifle. "Step where I can see you," he said. Slow. The man, Varner, he'd called himself, moved forward into the faint cast of firelight spilling through the shutters. Abel's eyes scanned every inch. Rough face, mid-40s maybe. Coat torn at the side, snow caught in the seams. His breath fogged slow and even, not jittery. His hands hung loose. No twitch, no madness in his eyes. He looked cold. Honest, maybe. Or good at pretending. "You protecting someone in there?" Varner asked, quieter now. "Heard a baby cry. That ain't your business," Abel said flat. "It is," Varner replied, calm. "If raiders are trailing you. Last I saw 'em, there were 5. rode with a red-striped saddle blanket. Nita went still behind Abel. That detail, too specific to fake. Abel had seen that same damn blanket on the shattered wagon. The dots connected, and not in a way he liked. He lowered the rifle just a fraction. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Varner said. "Camped about half a mile east. Got a mare and a tent, some food. Just came to warn you. The storm might bury your prints, but it won't bury theirs." Nita stepped up just a little, staying behind Abel's shoulder. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "What did you see 2 nights ago on the ridge?" Varner blinked. "Someone was out there?" "That wasn't you?" He shook his head, turning to peer back into the trees. "Then someone else is watching. And if they know you're holed up here, they ain't just passing by." Abel's stomach knotted. The question they'd carried since 2 chapters back finally had an answer. The watcher wasn't Varner, which meant someone else was still out there. Varner took a step back, careful. "I'll leave you be. But if that baby needs anything, medicine, firewood, my camp's marked by 2 pines, leaning like busted forks. Can't miss it." He turned slowly, giving Abel plenty of space to shoot if he meant to. Abel called out one last time, "Why risk your hide for strangers?" Varner paused. Didn't turn. "Years back, someone saved me. No reason. Just did. Seems fair I pay that forward." Then he walked into the white, the snow swallowing his shape until there was nothing left but wind. Inside, Nita exhaled, shoulders sagging like a cord had snapped. "You believe him?" she asked. Abel shut the door and bolted it tight. "I believe. He ain't the one we need to worry about." He set the rifle down and knelt beside Jace, who was still bundled warm near the hearth. The baby's cheeks were pink now, breath slow and deep. His tiny fist curled against Nita's chest. Abel reached out, brushing the child's arm with one calloused finger. That small touch sunk deep in him. Relief, fire, purpose. Nita lowered herself beside him, their shoulders close. "If the real watcher comes back," she began. "He'll find us ready," Abel said, voice low and steel hard. "And he'll wish he picked another damn cabin." Nita leaned her head against his shoulder. Just for a second. A quiet act of trust, one she hadn't dared before. Abel didn't move. Let her stay there. In the flickering light, he looked at her torn dress, the way she held Jace, the strength that hadn't bent even under loss and fear. She was stronger now than the night he'd first found her. "We stay together," she whispered. "We do," he answered. The storm howled outside, but inside, for the first time since that wagon trail, Abel felt something deeper than survival. Not fear, not doubt. Something else. Resolve. It wrapped around him like armor. Whoever was watching would come. But this time, Abel Harkin would be ready. By morning, the storm had died down. The whole land buried beneath a heavy sheet of white. Light slipped through the patched roof, casting faint gold lines on the cabin floor. Abel woke fast, rifle across his chest. His instincts, always coiled, snapped alert. Nita was already by the hearth. Jace nestled in her arms, warm and asleep. Her eyes flicked from fire to door, like she hadn't rested at all. He sat up. "Anything?" "Just wind," she said. "No shadows, no sound." Her voice was steady, but the tension sat in her shoulders like a coiled snake. They both felt it. And the listeners would too. The watcher hadn't gone far. And this wasn't over. Snow still blanketed the land, softening edges, dulling sound. It looked peaceful out there. But Abel Harkin knew better than to trust calm skies. peace could be a lie. Nita moved closer, cradling Jace tighter to her chest. "If the man Varner warned us about is still out there," she murmured, "he may strike while the sun's up." Abel nodded grimly. "Which is why we ain't waiting on him." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "We're leaving," he said. "Storm's past. The boy's stronger. Staying in that cabin makes us easy to track. If Varner was speaking the truth, his camp's safer than this." "And if he lied?" Nita asked, voice low. "Then I'll deal with him," Abel said flat, without pause. "But he ain't the one you saw that night, and he don't carry himself like no raider." Nita looked from the baby to Abel, her mind weighing every risk, and he didn't need to hear her doubts to answer them. "I'll wrap him tight, keep him close to my chest. He made it 3 days out there with less than we got now. We'll get him through." Nita exhaled, slow and steady. "Then we go." They packed in silence, swift and sure. Nita folded the blankets. Abel bundled up the dried meat and what little broth was left. He slung the rifle over his shoulder and stamped out the last embers in the fire. Before they left, Abel moved back through the snow, checking near the tree line. That's when he saw it. One clean boot print, sunk fresh in the white, right at the ridge. Not his, not Nita's, not Varner's. Someone had been there. Close. Watching. Abel crouched beside the track, jaw tight. The question that had haunted them since that long night in Chapter 6 had just been answered. The Watcher was real. And he was back. Abel stood and turned, trudging back towards the cabin. Nita met him halfway, Jace bundled up against her. "You saw something," she said. "Boot print," Abel replied. "Fresh. He was real close." Nita didn't flinch. "Then we move faster." Abel slipped Jace beneath his coat, pressed him to his chest. The baby was warm, breathing steady. Nita walked at his side, never once looking back. The cold lashed at her legs, bit into the scratches and bruises left from weeks alone in the wild. But she didn't slow. Not once. Not when she had Abel at her side. Not when she had something to protect. They followed the creek east, snow crunching underfoot. The wind quieted, the clouds thinning as sunlight broke through in patches. It was Abel who spotted the 2 leaning pines first, just like Varner had said. And beyond them, a curl of smoke. They approached with caution. Varner stepped out from behind his mare, both hands up, body calm. "Didn't expect you this quick," he said. His eyes dropped to Abel's coat. "Glad to see the boy made it." Abel didn't lower his guard. "Someone trailed us to the cabin. Tall, quiet. Watches from a distance." Varner's jaw flexed. "I know who that is." The last piece clicked into place. Listeners would want resolution, and here it was. "Name's Boone Taggart," Varner said. "Drifter. Hits supply camps, lone travelers. Always thinking there's easy picking in hidden cabins. Don't care who he robs. Sick, old, woman, don't matter." Nita's arms tightened around Jace. "Will he come here?" she asked. Varner glanced over Abel's shoulder, pointed. "Might have already tried. Saw someone far off trailing you. Turned away soon as he saw you both carrying iron." Abel's hand brushed the rifle at his side. Nita stepped closer, sharing his tension. "Storm kept him away, for now," Varner said, eyes scanning the ridge. "But if he thinks you've got something worth taking, he'll try again." "What's east of here?" Abel asked. "Settlement," Varner said. 2 miles out. Small place, decent folk. They'll give you shelter till the baby's strong enough." Abel turned to Nita. She didn't speak, just met his eyes and let him choose. He nodded. "We'll go." Varner saddled the mare and walked alongside them, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. The sun pressed down through thinning clouds, softening the snow, making the path easier. After nearly an hour, cabins came into view on a low ridge. Smoke curled from chimneys. Dogs barked. A woman carrying firewood paused to stare, then waved them forward. Safety waited ahead. Nita reached out, her hand brushing Abel's arm. This time it wasn't fear. It wasn't desperation. It was something else. Choice. "You saved us," she whispered. Abel shook his head. "We saved each other." She stopped walking, turned to face him. Her fingers touched his jaw, light as snow. "Then stay with us, wherever we go." Abel didn't answer, not with words. He kissed her. Slow. Sure, no urgency, no demand, just truth. Her breath softened against his mouth. Her hand gripped his coat, holding all three of them close. When they pulled apart, Abel said what needed saying. "I ain't leaving either of you." Between them, Jace stirred, warm, safe, his small hand pressing into both their hearts. Nita smiled, quiet, weary, whole. They walked the last stretch side by side, snow crunching beneath their boots, the world ahead no longer shadowed with fear. Their running ended here, their danger past, and what began in fire and snow had become something more than survival, something like family, born not from blood, but from choice, grit, and a promise to stay. A real ending, a Western ending, and one worth holding on to.